I used to think, so I need to show everybody that I earned these credentials and they were right to hire me for these credentials and that was super off putting. Believe me, I did not walk in the door with my PhD on the first day and I'm humble and I'm here to learn. No, no, no. No, I just kept making that mistake, running like full speed into the same brick
Wow.
wall.
Welcome to another episode of the Living Out Loud discussion series. Today we are talking about the erasure of people, communities, and DEI work when they have a lower representation in professional settings. I am your host, Charmaine Utz, a relational DEI expert. If you are new here, we are unpacking real-life scenarios and issues that come up in our interactions in professional settings or in areas where we feel like we need to be buttoned up. The goal of every single episode is to reveal the layers and the nuances in our interactions so that we can learn about them as a community that cares about diversity, equity, and inclusion. As always, the thoughts, views, opinions, things that are shared in today's conversation, those are my own and not as a representative of any of the agencies that I work for or am contracted by. Donovan Ackley III. I am so glad to be sharing space with you, and I've had you on my radar for quite some time. You are someone that no matter what we are doing, what we're talking about, even if it seems like a small little check-in, I am learning something from you. I am certain that people who are listening and watching are going to learn something from you too. We met probably, I don't know, maybe a couple-ish years ago. We were working at the Academy for Professional Excellence together. And wherever you were, whatever meeting it was, you brought a lens that required me personally and other people to think about what was happening and why it was happening and where it came from. Had me always looking at things I hadn't necessarily saw or from the lens that was very helpful to see it from. So I found you as somebody who is an incredible source of information. I don't even know if you know this, but you have impacted my development. You are someone that I look to, even on LinkedIn. I trust you as a resource and an expert. So thank you for being here. I'm excited.
Thank you, Charmaine.
Yes. If you don't mind, you can share anything about yourself, whatever you would want people to know before we get into today's topic.
Okay. First and foremost, I'm a parent. I think that's the thing that keeps me going. And aside from that, my earliest professional training and work was I was ordained as a minister when I was only 18 years old. That's I'm not in that profession anymore for a variety of different reasons, and that may become part of our conversation. I don't know, but in any case, I'm bringing it up because that sort of shaped me. I've been a spiritual seeker my whole life, and I spent many years as a religious studies professor. I went into that as a scholarly endeavor. So my PhD is in religion, and I was the chair of a department of religion, and I spent several decades working in that field. So that's a sensibility I bring with me to the way that I am, even though I work in the behavioral health world now. And of course, I respect that not everybody shares a sort of spiritual or religious perspective. I guess that sort of spiritual seeking kind of openness and the desire to connect the dots and be in harmony with others and be in balance and be connected to things that are greater than myself, being connected with people in compassionate ways. Those things are all go deep into who I am. And so my work life seems scattered. Um, since I left that world about 10 years ago. But the other thing is that I'm a trauma survivor, and now that includes religious trauma. So part of my own wellness journey has been to, it kind of blends both those things, be of service to other people and use my lived experience, understanding that it's really about my own healing. I have to do my own inner work every day. And at the same time, how other people can be a part of that and how sharing some of those hardest things that I go through or have been through, that maybe that those can be ways to build community with other people and help other. I want to say that in a not condescending way. So I'm not trying to say, oh, I'm here to help other people. I want to be helpful and useful to other people. And I understand my own healing is interconnected with that. So it's not a, top down sort of a thing. It's we're all in this together type of thing. A
Mhm.
peer support mentality is very important to me. I do have training in that as well, even though I also have a PhD. I do probably come into my work more from a peer support understanding than from I have a PhD kind of understanding.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
found that to be as helpful, even though now I'm working as a research specialist, but I'm also working at building community-based interventions in that research. So I get to draw from both. When it comes to publishing findings, it's helpful that I have a PhD, but when it comes to actually doing the work in community, that's the PhD does not help at all. It's the lived
Yeah.
experience that's helpful.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. That was a very long introduction. I guess other things will come up as they're relevant.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Even in your, I can read a bio, I can see a resume, but even in hearing you describe your journey and what you're grounded in, I hadn't heard that before. And it's so interesting. And I can see what you still have in you that you lean on in your approach with people. I could totally see that. That makes so much sense. And it's fascinating. You, I do feel like in your experiences, part of what I want to say is part of what makes you somebody who reaches people is you have this way of you use your experience and then you tie it with other people's. It's very communal, but in a safe way. And then you offer it like, did you know these things? Here, why don't you look at this? But it's full of, it's like from your heart and your own reality. It's really cool. So thank you for doing that. I just had all of these realizations when you were talking, and I very much connected with that. So thank you. Thank you. All right. So let's get started on this topic. I like to start every episode by being very clear about what we mean when we say things. And when we talk about erasure of people and communities, I think that while it might seem self explanatory to ask, like, why is it important to be talking about this? I don't think if I ask people this question, if I ask 10, 20 people this question, I think I get very different answers. And I honestly think I might get people uncertain of how to respond because it's a thing that we say is important, but I don't think we talk about the layers of it. So can we start there? Like, why is it important to be talking about these people community? There's smaller portions at professional settings.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I can't help but notice what's going on in the world right now as you're asking me that question. And I just recently have been seeing a lot of sharing from Jewish communities in America about what a tiny percentage they are of the population, yet how disproportionately they're represented in hate crimes.
Mm.
It's also Trans Awareness Week, Transgender Day of Remembrance, which is an international, I don't want to say celebration, but it's an international day of remembrance for trans people that have been murdered in hate crimes. So that's Trans Awareness Week and Trans Day of Remembrance they line up together. I'm thinking of that too. Just that's the first thing that pops to my mind is that
Yeah.
sometimes a very tiny community is disproportionately attacked and lives are at stake. And it's
Mm.
in a way that even if we're not a member of that community, or if we don't have anyone we love who's a member of that community, maybe we don't personally know anyone in that community, it's still when we think of what's happening to Jewish people right now. And I know this complex. I'm not trying to single out one
Yeah.
group or pit one against the other. I don't mean it that way at all. I'm just saying that has an impact when a member of our world or a member of our country, I'm saying it wrong, a member of, but you know what I mean? The
Yeah.
violence in the world impacts us all. Like it's a heavy weight we're all carrying that this is happening again. People are being targeted and that feeling of, I don't know what to do. I'm afraid, all of it. It's a heavy weight for everybody. So I think it does affect everybody, even if we don't feel like we're personally affected. Bearing witness to it is hard, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to intervene. And that certainly affects workplaces, having that running in the background while you're trying to go through your workday. And then, of course, if there is somebody in your workplace that you don't know is a member of those communities, or maybe is openly a member of those communities, and you don't know how to be an ally, or
Hmm.
it may not be the way we talked about it before, but that's just
No,
what's
that's
up
okay.
for me with what's going on in the world right this minute.
Yes, that makes so much sense. And my mind immediately jumped to these different ideas. I don't know why my mind jumped there to these different ideas of what could be done in organizations, but it skipped over several steps. So I think I'm going to put a pin in that for a second and stay here. And a couple of the things that you were talking about is people associate these conversations with a political correctness. And while what's happening in society can be very political for people, there's also an over association with it's just political. There's this human aspect that you're talking about, the connectedness. And then that responding in these situations, it's not a place to be performative. And I wanted to know if you
Yeah.
could speak a little bit more on those because your insight, like your lens to that was really helpful for me.
Hmm. Well, I'm just feeling a lot of that right now.
Okay.
Like I said to your last question, so I'm not sure how clear I'm going to be, but again, going back to these are life and death matters. They're not political idiot. I understand some people grandstand and soapbox about these things. At the same time, it's very vivid and present to me right now, again, with what's going on in the world, that these are literally people are dying. And that feeling of, I want to know how to be of support, but I don't know how to support this community without offending that community, even though there are people I love in both communities. I'll say this just to be more respectful and stay in my own lane, I'll keep it to trans and intersex issues because that's I'm in both of those communities. So how do I navigate that with, as I said before, I'm a person that came out of a very religious background. That in itself, even just saying that, that's why I don't usually lead with that because, well, I don't want to offend my friends. I don't want to, about being politically correct, but I know people have deep religious trauma around this stuff. People have deep trauma around misogyny and patriarchy and who knows what else is in their background that as a trans or intersex person, I want to be mindful that your feelings about sex and gender might have deep roots in trauma that you've lived through. It's not just a political issue. And I, even in one of these minority groups or a couple of these minority groups, how can I say? I'm targeted with discrimination, and people I love in my communities are targeted with even more discrimination than I experienced. And I want to do something about that. At the same time, I want to navigate that in ways that we can hear each other, that we can I don't know if I'm addressing your question or not. So often it seems like these things are discussed in very abstract ways when I know people that are in life or death situations or have died by suicide, or it's not ideological alone. In fact, the ideological issues to me are sort of a distraction from the real life human living in a body that's complicated. How do I navigate that? How do I navigate that peaceably with the people in my life? Recognizing that it may be hard for them too, and finding ways to be alive in this body I was born into in ways that, again, that just allow me and other people to live in harmony. That we may have some things we got to work through, including conflict, and it may be difficult and uncomfortable. Still, how can we live together harmoniously without harming each other, without being driven to hate crimes out of fear or however these things happen.
Hmm. Hmm. You had asked if you're answering my question, and my first thought was, what if we just have this conversation in whatever we talk about? It's important to me, it's important that we model what these conversations look like. And while there can be some discussion about topics like this, especially in professional settings, we don't get into them deep enough to really have consistent practice with each other, knowing how to do all of you said the ideological stuff, and then there's the practice. There's a lot that's not navigated fully yet for us to really know how to do it all. And I don't think we have to do it all. Your to me, what you're living out right now, even in your response, is in this place that's very practical, human. This is what's happening every day, and this is why it's important in people's lives. And there's this concept that people are talking about, and this is actually why we can't stay in this ideological theory place of, yes, this is an important issue, we should do something about it, without adding the elements that you're bringing in, because that's the most important part. If you're going to do something about the ideas and the theories we're talking about, we have to make room for stuff that you're sharing. And one of the other things that you were talking about was that people have these things going on in their own lives, and then people go into various professional settings and they are still themselves. The
Yeah.
world is still the world. We're still dealing with things. I think what can be interesting, and you really put this on my radar in a different way. You really, really did. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to capture this either. So I'm going to lean into what I just told you for myself. But it was like, there is an experience that people are having that we only know from that ideological place. We know something is important. We know people are experiencing something, but we really don't know a lot of people don't know anything about the experiences of people that are smaller portions of a demographic. And because we are so removed from what that experience is, we're not grasping even like the surface level of what that means for the people that we're working with. We miss the things that we talk about casually because we just don't understand it. We miss the moments that are important in our interactions with each other. And I don't remember exactly what you told me. I just remember thinking to myself, while I understand that there are lots of parts of people's identities, and I can value that till the end of time, there is an impact of me not knowing anything about someone's life, like not even research wise. Like I don't know anything about it until someone says something to me. I could unintentionally do harm, miss something, have points of disconnection. And then there's experience of people that are portions of the smaller population that are just sitting with whatever they're sitting with at work, experiencing more on top of, because there's all these interactions and norms that are okay that further, I keep doing this, I keep thinking about it, it's further pushing down the experiences of people we don't know anything about. And the extra layer is, you would say some people, we don't even know parts of people's identities. If we don't know, oftentimes it's not safe to say it. There's so much there. I don't even know where to go with that.
I'm not sure where to go with it either. One, one of
Well,
the things you had asked about before was being performative. And I was thinking about that while you were sharing just now, and the difference between being performative and just all of what you just shared and the way you shared it. That came from you came across very sincere. I want to learn. I want to do better. I recognize that I don't know what I don't know. Um, and that's what kept coming up for me, is this sort of genuinely wanting to make space for people, because none of us know what we don't know. I'm white all day long. There's nothing I can freaking do about that. It bugs me sometimes, but I have to walk through this world and just be aware that, okay, in this meat bag that I live in, I come across some kind of certain way to people, whether I want to or not. And as long as I'm mindful of that, I might be able to be told, if I'm listening and being mindful and being the kind of person that's trustworthy and present, that somebody might be willing to share with me. Ouch, you just stepped on my toes. I'm very thankful that I've had so many colleagues and friends and mentors in my life who've had those conversations with me. And since I've had so many of those conversations, they don't need to go on and on about it. I don't have to take a bunch of their emotional labor.
yeah.
Usually a single sentence is enough to wreck me at this point. But I'm so grateful because I'm like, nobody owes me that,
Yeah.
And so now I get to, because I'm intersex and I'm trans, I get to experience that from a different angle of being aware that there's a lot of people in the world that, just like you said, 98% of the people in the world or more don't have an intersex condition. 99.7% of the people in the world are not trans. So that's a lot of people that don't have experience with this. And even those of us that do have experience with it, because there's so few of us, I hear that in trans community and intersex community. I hear that over and over again. It's like, I didn't know another person who was trans. I didn't know another person who was intersex until I was X years old, and I had never heard of it. And my doctors had never heard of it. And so my point is saying that is I think
Mm.
if you get to ever have a heart to heart with an intersex or trans person, you'll often hear, I myself don't understand this. I'm still figuring it out. So how in the world can I expect, as a trans person, as an intersex person, how can I expect someone who doesn't have that experience to
Mm.
understand?
Mm.
What was coming up for me in the way that you were sharing is it's that same spirit of, if I navigate the world with a certain humility, and my relationships at work and outside work with a certain humility, that I don't know all that there is to this. I don't know what's going on with any, I don't care what they look at like on the outside, or even what if they're wearing a red hat or whatever signals they're giving out. I still don't know what's going on in their inner world, what's going on in their family, who they love, how that's impacted them, what trauma have they survived. I don't know. I won't say the coarse word, but the thing that I don't know crap. All right. I'll just say, I don't, that's just something I tell myself all the time. It's just, I don't know crap. I'm always in learning mode. And
Yes. Yes.
yeah, I heard that in what you were sharing. I think that's the difference between what's actually helpful and creates a space where someone who's got a minority experience might be able to speak up and say, have you considered this? Or, well, my experience is different. Would you mind if I share a little bit about that? Or so if there's a safe space to do that, I think a person that's part of a very small, tiny minority is pretty well aware that
Mhm.
most people aren't familiar with their experience. Like, that's not
Mm.
going to be news to them.
Yeah.
So I think we all kind of know is like, there's some times that if I want some information shared, I'm going to have to be the one to do it. And I don't, and I've heard other people in larger minorities share this as well. It's like, sometimes we don't want to do the emotional labor. Sometimes we know I'm not going to be the one to show up and be the token member of my minority group today. I don't have the bandwidth for it. I'm not, no, just no. So we have to, like, that's the inner work of knowing your own boundaries, right? And again, I've been taught that by people who have more experience with this than I do,
Mhm.
entire communities that have more experience with this than I do. So I want to give credit that I think they're wonderful mentors and vocal teachers. Anyway, there are many wonderful people that have taught that besides me that I'm grateful to learn.
I am just reflecting on like even how we are engaging this conversation. And I feel like while we don't know everything, we are in spaces. One, we are teachers of this type of work and engagement with people. And two, there are parts of our identities that are groups that are historically targeted for oppression, marginalization. So there's that. And I feel like we don't know, but we have some practice in it. There's something that we're working with. And now I'm thinking about the reasons that people may not respond in professional settings. And I'm thinking about what are the reasons that like are rationalized as like a shared rationalization, shared norm for not engaging, because there's some real ones. And this is not about shaming. It's just there are very real
Hmm.
communal experiences around the avoidance or
Yeah.
fear or whatever it is. But can we talk about that? Because I just know we're going through it and figuring out how this is working for us in real time and we have experience. And then there's people who are like, I don't even know what to do. There's too many things. So, what are those reasons? What are the norms that are behind not taking action?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because it reminds me, like, I got distracted by what I was sharing. So what I was trying to say is the way that we're doing this is different from having that sort of humility and wanting to create space for each other to share whatever we need to share, and the messiness of it. And like you said, that it's not exactly rigid rules. It's more responding to things that are going on in real time. So that's different from that. My experience of that sort of, what I call ideological discussions of these issues. It's more like I'm trying to win an argument, or I'm trying to
Mm,
not look stupid in an argument. At very least, I'm trying to defend
mm,
myself. So that kind of gets like
yeah.
what you're bringing up. Um, the things that people like you said, I like the way you said it, is very compassionate. People understandably have real reasons why they might want to avoid these conversations, and especially in a workplace. So I'm thinking of, first and foremost, I don't want to offend anybody. I have to work with these people every day, and I don't want to cause harm to someone that I work with that I actually respect and want to have a good working relationship with. So it's probably easier for me to keep my mouth shut, because if the quiet person isn't offending anyone, right? If I don't say anything, I can't say anything wrong. I
Yeah.
do that myself. I understand that fully. And then there's maybe someone who's a little bit more insecure in their work might have, that sounded very judgmental. I meant that from a place of compassion. When I'm new
I
in a
knew what you meant.
workplace, I just want to make sure anybody who doesn't know me knows this. I'm not,
Mm.
coming into a new workspace, understandably not secure in one's position, feeling out the lay of the land, all that. Like, someone may not want to risk sounding like they don't know what they're talking about. Like, what I was just sharing, the way that we're doing this, like, we are seemingly willing to be somewhat vulnerable with each other. And I can understand that in some workplaces that's not safe.
Mhm.
Maybe, or for a certain individual, maybe they could get to a point where they have skills to remain safe even while they're being vulnerable. But if you don't have those skills, like you pointed out quite accurately, like, you and I have been in settings where we've been taught and practiced these skills many times with each other sometimes, but predating when we knew each other. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because I forget that sometimes. You know,
Mhm.
I wasn't born knowing how to do this. Like, people have definitely invested a lot of time teaching me how to communicate and particularly have difficult conversations, and being aware of differences. We were in a group working with and across differences, right? That's something that's been a consistent part of my training for 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 40 years. Yeah, and probably longer, because my parents were hippies and they were into nonviolent community-based organizing,
Mm-hmm.
resistance, anti-Vietnam movement,
Mm.
anti-Vietnam War. Um,
So,
yes. Yeah, civil rights organizing for women and other things like that. I'm really digressing, but now I've even forgotten what you asked me. Just
that's okay.
sorry.
We were just
Yeah.
talking about the reasons that people
Yeah, yeah.
don't.
Not wanting to look stupid, not wanting to,
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to get to. Just not wanting to, maybe I'll look like I'm not as valuable to this team or in this workplace if I come across like I don't know what to talk. Reasons
Mm.
for me to pull back and maybe not address these issues that, like you had brought up earlier, maybe I don't have any experience with this. I don't know anyone who does. I haven't had reason to do any research or get any training on this. So no, I'm not going to ask quite. That's the biggest thing I guess I'm trying to get to with this part, is
Yeah.
people that might be afraid to ask questions because they don't want to look like they don't know. Um,
Yeah.
which is a wonderful,
Yeah.
for me, it's like the looking like I don't know and being willing to ask a question is the opportunity to learn. And it usually builds rapport with other people, because that's what I've found. If
Yeah.
I'm willing to ask a question and I'm not coming across a know-it-all, that's actually much better for my working and my
Mhm.
working relationships. But a lot of people don't know that yet, and they haven't had that experience. I'll just land with what you brought up, that these are skills we can practice. We don't have to know all these things. And as you pointed out, you and I have some experience with practicing these skills. And even
Mhm.
so, it always remains something I'm learning in real time with each person.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. My brain has too
Yeah.
many thoughts. This is like right around the time in my conversations where I want to talk about 10 things at once. But I just want to lift up one or two pieces from what you were saying before we keep going, which is I feel like there was a good amount for me, 10-ish years of what I was doing with people that was really grounded in people had this fear of a lot, fear of losing relationships, fear of getting canceled or whatever it was. But there's one that's now it's spiking for me, which is not wanting people to see them not knowing. I'm hearing that a lot more from people. There's more verbalizing of, I don't want people to know I don't know. And I keep telling people, most people don't know. Like, you're in a
Right.
space where, no, did you know that people don't know? Like, even experts don't fully know it's impossible to know everything. So
That
you're in company where nobody fully knows. And lots of people have no idea. And when I do trainings, I start with anonymous, wherever I can, anonymous questions, and let people see all the answers. And the questions usually have very similar responses around the reasons for fear. When people see it, the room just genuinely surprised. And I'm like, it's not surprising, y'all. People don't know how to do it because we're not doing it. And
right.
if we knew how to do it, we would do it. So it's okay to not know. Can we
Right.
normalize? Everyone's showing up not knowing how to do it. So we're all going to try to figure it out. The practice is the way through it. That's like the only way through it to me. And the other part that came up, because when you just described your response to not knowing and like your lens about it, for me, in the work that I do with people, I can only speak for those people and myself. And what I'm hearing in you that's a good example is you in yourself, either you work through or you don't go here. There's nothing in you that's so worried about looking like you don't know that prevents you from taking action. And there are a lot of people who their fear of being seen as not knowing is attached to something deeper in themselves, about like narratives about themselves that makes it difficult to just take action. And I'm really trying to get people to see the clinical aspect of a lot of this work, that we all have these things in us that are preventing us from doing the things we want to do, even at work with our colleagues. This
Yeah.
is why this work can't be, oh, I just learn about this at work and this is how I engage at work. No, at work, your inside feeling historical stuff is in there and it's impacting how you
Real.
are doing or not doing things at work. So there are so many people that I coach, their place of not knowing is attached. I don't want to look stupid, because if I look stupid, then that means and enter any narrative there that they got
Yeah.
in childhood
Yeah.
or through trauma.
Yeah.
And without that being acknowledged and addressed, depending on who the person is, like there's various levels of it, it shows up at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Do you think that we can transition to, so what happens? Let's say people are getting it right. What happens when these or the issues and experiences of people of smaller, disproportionately you know the word I'm trying to say. The groups
Represent.
of people are smaller portion. Yes. What happens when those are acknowledged and addressed?
I think I went right to where people get it wrong. I guess the reason I'm reacting like this, I'm going to go ahead and just voice this. As a trans person, right now in our culture, gosh, for the last several years, there's been an awful lot of noise about trans people, which, given how small a percentage of the population we are as a trans person, it feels like a little too much for me. And I'm saying even when people are trying to be inclusive. So I
Mhm.
guess I'm going to have to, I just feel I have to answer this first. So I know sometimes when people are trying to be inclusive, it's like workplace. Let's everybody have a training. We're going to have a workplace training on trans people. And we're going to just really laser focus in on trans people and bombard you with lots of information. And I guess that could be, but given how little a percentage of the population we are, it feels a little weird to like have this floodlight of a spotlight just glaring on this I might be the only trans person in my workplace. So I don't know that I really want to be this focus of an all day mandatory, everybody look at me thing, even if,
Oh, yeah.
you know what I mean? So
I do
I-
actually.
I'm
Yes.
not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that's not the ideal. To answer your question, it ain't that. That's what I wanted. I just want to start there. That's the point. we're all in community together. We bring ourselves to our work. And I'll say in the workspace I'm in now, once again, I'm the only trans person in my workplace, but at the same, it's a small team. And I was brought on for that lived experience and that expertise of working with that community. And I get to do other things. That's not the only thing I do and the only thing I am there. That to me is when we can all do that, where, for example, I work on a diverse team that internationally diverse. We have diverse languages represented and diverse in a lot of different ways. So if everybody can bring who they are and bring it in when it's relevant and it listened to and heard and respected and integrated in the work to make our whole team better because, oh, you can see things that I can't and you can see things that I can't. And that's good. And now we can polish the language we were going to use or change this phrase or work differently with this community, or you have this network and what a valuable network that is. And you can work with that community and get their perspectives on this intervention. So if everybody's doing that and everybody's welcome to do that and there's space and responsiveness to that, that to me is the ideal we're looking for. And that I think that to me is why sometimes it's hard for me to understand why going back to when people are scared, do they have these conversations or when these conversations are ideological. Sometimes it's that, oh, if you speak your tiny little truth that hardly represents anybody, you're drowning out the other 99.
Yes. Yeah.
So particularly, yeah, I guess I don't know if I need to give examples, but sometimes it is as a trans person, sometimes the desire to exclude trans voices comes from, I'm oppressed because of my gender. And if we start talking about your gender, which is hardly anybody's gender, then you're stepping on 50% of the population that's also dealing with gender-based oppression. And you're taking time and energy and space away from this much larger, actually a majority, I think is 51, 52%, right? Of people that are women. Yeah. Anyway.
Yes. So the oppression Olympics thing that many people, many places, not just professional settings, but like it's everywhere. Started when you were saying that, I was thinking about oppression Olympics. You know what I was thinking is, or I'm just going to say it. I was starting to think, like, how's it going to sound? It's going to sound like my truth, and it's going to sound like the truth that exists. When DEI work started booming a bit more, and this was prior to 2020, the summer of 2020, what the conversation was that the LGBTQ plus community and those issues concern. Now, mind you, this is a whole group of people lumped into one thing, but it was like that was a higher priority in workplaces. Workplaces were more willing to address LGBTQ plus issues and acknowledge the community over many other groups of people, in particular racial ethnic groups of people.
Yeah.
Like that was a lot.
Yeah.
And then there are all these talks around, even in that community, the LGBTQ plus community, there's hierarchies in there.
Oh,
And those
real.
issues were just kind of, and so it just creates this hierarchy of people who get resources and responses to issues in the workplace, keeping groups of people at work pitted against each other, fighting for like my issues, not, so, and that's a function of the world that we live in. And I'm not saying this is okay, by the way, I'm just like talking this stuff out loud. But oppression Olympics exist systemically, societally, and relationally between each other because we feel like it can't be all of us together. That's not how we've been taught things work. There's only room for so many things. So who's going to be up here and who's second, third? And if you're at the bottom, well, you just got to deal with it. And what we're talking about in this conversation and what I believe other people are trying to make room for is just because one group, one person has an experience, it's not a cancel out. It's not a competition of, it's a space where they're all there at the same time. So there's no need to combat. And there's still the very real part of workplaces where resources are and attention is given to only certain things. So that can be really hard. But I just wanted to point that out, that it's a thing that we all experience, and then our systems still be doing the things to keep us in competition with each other.
Right. Right. Yeah. And when you bring that up, I think two things came up for me. One was the image of the welcome table that's been so important. At least where I learned it was from like Alice Walker and womanist Black women's organizing and um, just Black organizing in general. I know I've heard it from men too, but I first heard it from women, bringing that model up to address exactly what you're talking about. To say it does not have to be this way. We can all sit at the table, be welcome. This is how we do Black community. Why can't we do this, in other spaces, learn from us, and it works, right? So everybody's welcome. We're not all grabbing food from each other. There's enough for everybody. We sit together and we learn together. And that's the kind of workplace community I was trying to describe. I agree with Black women and other Black people that it can be like that. And why not? We can do that. It works. But the other thing that was coming up for me, I've already forgotten because I'm so excited about that beloved community welcome table kind of experience and image. Gosh darn it. I was going to say something, but I can't remember. So it must not be that important. Oh,
Well,
no,
that's
I do
true.
remember. Sorry. That in contrast with you were talking about competing for resources in the workplace. So that thing about like when I said, oh yeah, when we do the all day mandatory training of we're going to train on LGBTQ people for 2 days. And then we're going to train on the Black community. Like that's one monolithic thing for a day or 2 days. So that's what feels a little bit more, not that we shouldn't, if we haven't done anything, yeah, let's do that. But that feels a little bit more, okay, everybody's focusing resources, energy, time, and space for a day on some people. And then we're going to take all those resources away. And now we're going to focus on these people. And then we're going to go back to our work and not really focus on this at all. And that seems to be more, again, I don't want to say don't do that at all.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing. But I wouldn't want anybody to think that's where we're trying to land. That may be your first step to building out the welcome table and experiencing that, but it definitely it's still contributing to what you were talking, competing for resources type of experiences. And if this community gets an all day training, then why don't we? And by the way, our community is 10 times the size of that community. So maybe we should have a 10-day training. Well, if
Right. And then to your point, you can have trainings about specific groups of people, but everybody in these communities, they're different. And I think this highlights the importance of when you were describing your relationship with people close to you, what I was hearing is you all have gotten to a point where you navigate all the things as they come up. They know you, you know them. If something happens, it's that one statement, you all get it, you know what it means, you move on. That's the relational aspect of the work. So to have a training describe a group of people and their experiences isn't the answer. I'm not saying don't do anything because I want to go back to that in a second.
Right.
But it's more important to teach organizations and for people to then learn how to interact with each other in various settings and learn who the people are that you're working with, because you understand them and they understand you and they have different needs and experiences. And it's just a different type of learning that's not based on Black. Okay, you're over there. That's your experience. And then, okay, trans, you're over there. I remember this from that training. I'm going to say this exact thing to you. It's not about that, because then that's also one part of you. And this is one part of me. And what about the rest? It's impossible to go through all the trainings to categorize people and be like, in my mind, you're like 5% Black, so I'll do that. And then you're this percent. It's so nonsensical to approach the work in terms of training. So there's the relational part. We haven't gotten to a place where we are training and practicing, learning how to be with each other and learn each other and co-create our relationships and find collaborate, our paths to collaborate are ways of addressing points of disconnection. That's just not what we're learning. And there's some information that I think about a lot of historical contexts of various groups of people that feel really important to know. In my experience, a lot of what gets missed in terms of people's understanding is historical stuff
Yeah.
and the meaning of those things, and then how they show up in today's actions. People don't get that. I feel like that's good information to be learning. And don't discount not learning
Yeah.
about people. It's just you're not going to get to the point that I think people want to get at, which is where they know people and they're not doing harm. That you're not going to get to that point by taking a Black person training, an LGBTQ plus training. I'm not going to name all the categories, but you know what
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it sounds like it comes back to that thing you were talking about before about people, you're running across a lot of people that are concerned about coming across like they don't know anything.
Mm.
And when you were sharing about that before, and now as you're sharing about this, what keeps
Mm.
coming up for me that's been useful, you asked me about what work I had done in myself that I'm not worried about that anymore. It's really been life itself that's done that work on me, because what I've learned by having relationships with other humans in the world over, I have white hair, I've been here a while, is when I come across like a know-it-all that does not build relationship.
Yeah.
I can have a PhD all day. It does not help me build a relationship. It just doesn't. Even in a
Yeah.
workplace where you'd think, well, they hired me because of my credentials. Well, maybe you wouldn't, but I used to. I used to think, so I need to show everybody that I earned these credentials and they were right to hire me for these credentials and that was super off-putting. Like that never in my life ever built a good work
I
environment.
can't even see
And
you like that. Wow.
because
Really?
really, I did that to death, knocked my head against that wall until it
Wow.
passed out. Believe me, I did not walk in the door with my PhD on the first day and I'm humble and I'm here to learn. No. No, I just kept making that mistake, running like full speed into the same brick
Wow.
wall. Someone that is a mentor to me says that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I did that. That was me. So when I came out, life put me into a situation where those credentials just didn't have value to the same people anymore because a trans person had them, which so suddenly rendered them pointless, I guess. But that was a really good thing for me because I got to learn that there's other ways of communicating with people where
Yeah.
those credentials aren't relevant. And I was constantly in learning situations, like as a person that had been a university department chair, I was learning how to be a security guard. I couldn't walk into that situation. Oh, I know everything there is about being a security guard. No, of course. Even as a job, I ended up, so I'd been a preacher and a theologian. I published theologian, all these things. I ended up, the job I could find was as a church janitor, not even the church janitor. I was the assistant to the church janitor. I was in learning mode. I was like, I've never been a janitor before.
Yeah.
These were really good things for me. I started to find out my relationships with people are so much better than they ever have been because I'm asking questions and I'm saying, I don't know how to do this. I don't actually have any experience at this, but
Yeah.
I'm willing to learn. How do you do it? Those were the things that helped me build relationship. And of course, it's been really clear for me from day one. I'm never going to understand what it is to be a Black person in this world. I can take trainings and read books and take classes and have mentors and friends and loved ones in my life who are Black all day long. And I'm grateful to do that. And if anything, that the message I hear again and again is there's a lot of this you're just not going to get. You can love me all day long, but you don't know what it is to walk through the world of my skin. And you can listen deeply and you can remember that and be mindful of that information that, as much as I've been able to share with you or willing to share with you, but you still don't know. You don't know what it is. And definitely, for me to be in relationship with people who have different experiences than I do, if I had come across, I don't even know, like I was very young when I was coming here. Well, I took this African-American literature class, so I know BSU, what you were going. I did that one time. I wrote an article in the student newspaper in college. Yeah, I did that.
Wow.
I filed out like that one time, like, why don't we all sit? I'll be honest with you. This was the article. Why don't we all sit together in the cafeteria? Because idiot. Okay. The STO invited me to one meeting, and they're like, "You're a guest speaker. You will sit in the back. You
Oh
will
my
listen,
gosh.
and now you will know why we don't sit with you at the." I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It's fine. It's fine. First of all, I'm loving
This is
this,
what I
Donovan. I
did.
have not seen you before.
This is how people teach me, though. And I'll say follow up.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not. If I was talking the way I really talk, it would be a different word. But when I follow up, people are
Right.
willing. I better be willing to learn. That's all I can
Yeah.
say. And when I have
Yeah.
willing to learn, I get to continue to walk with people, let's say in humility, knowing that I don't know what I don't know. And then I get to have friends, which being alone, a know-it-all is very lonely. And plus, all I'm ever going to find out is that I don't know it all.
Yeah.
There's nothing more ignorant than a know-it-all. That's what I've learned in life. So I guess I'm just sharing that for those people that are afraid I might look like I don't know. All I've ever found is that if I act like I do know, I'm an a-hole. If I admit that I don't know, I get a chance to have amazing working relationships with people.
Yes.
Especially because people who look like me don't usually admit that they don't know it all, fortunately. So I find that coming across very sincerely, look, I've learned the hard way. I don't know it all.
Yeah.
And I'm going to mess up. That's the other thing I was here. Like anybody that's worried, just know, like, and that's the other thing you were talking about. Those trainings reminded me of. I think the core message of those trainings ought to be, here's some information and you don't know anything.
Yeah.
Just remember, you're
Yeah.
gonna mess up. Cool that
Yes.
you showed up. Great that you took notes. Great that you
Yes.
might remember one or two things that you learned today.
Yes.
And this teaches you all the stuff you didn't know before, and that's only the tip of the iceberg of what you don't know. So
Yes.
you get to navigate in the world as a person that doesn't know and is definitely going to mess up, but you also have demonstrated that you're willing to learn. Those are really all the tools you need. Don't know, I'm
Yes.
willing to learn. That's good.
Yeah. Yes. And these are good things. This to me is like a good wrapping up point that we're at. And you are calling attention to some very good practical things people can do. But even in what you're doing, which I love, by the way, I, I feel like I've interacted with you a lot, but all of these parts about your journey and things you've done I just didn't know. And they're hilarious in a way that I can understand. Probably didn't feel good at the time. Really sucked. Had to learn through it. But the part I want to point out is you're modeling another practical thing that people can do and can find a lot of healing from, which is share the lessons in the train wrecks. Like that's we all experience these things that we did and they just didn't go well. And we don't have to people retreat to self and they feel a lot of shame around what they did. It wasn't right. I'm a bad person. Whatever it is that where are the places that people go in themselves. But there's so much to learn in that and the normalizing of you don't know. This is actually what it looks like to not know. I did these things. Didn't work out well for me. And this
It
is
was
where it came
well-meaning.
from. Huh?
I said, and was well-meaning.
Yes. Yes.
Well-meaning, but ignorant as hell. Yeah.
Yes. It's hilarious because
Yeah.
we all do those things.
Everybody
You
has their
know?
holes in that, probably. Yeah.
Yes. And sometimes they suck and sometimes you can laugh at them. And laughing at them in community, it's like, I get it. I know that feeling of whatever that was that you were probably going through. And wow, look how far you've come. That's all okay to talk about. And it's a thing that people are afraid to even acknowledge and admit. It's one, I have all these fears and I don't want to look like I don't know. And then I tried it and it didn't go right. I don't want anyone to know. No one's expecting you to get it right on your first or several teen tries. We're just trying it out till it starts to make sense. And that takes time. It takes so much time, but my heart is full with everything that you just gave. And I appreciate you for living that out and modeling it and normalizing. Like, it's cool. Yeah, it's very cool. What a great,
There's just one more thing I want to add to
yeah.
that because you said, look how far you've come. And my immediate thought was, look how far I got to come because my fellow classmates who were in the BSU, a couple of them were willing to extend their hand to bring me in for a minute in a very specific way for a very specific amount of time for a very specific reason. and I understood their boundaries, and they taught me. My point is, if I hadn't screwed up, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn that. Well, a well-intentioned screw up, and I think that's the other piece of it,
Mm.
that they could tell I was well-meaning, or they wouldn't have invited me if I'd been
Mhm.
coming at that from a different angle, let's say. So it was a combination. I effed up and I didn't mean to, and they could see that. So they were willing to invite me in for a second.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's happened to me again and again and again. I guess that's what I was trying to say before too, is like, if I admit that I don't know and I know that I'm going to screw up sometimes, then I can show up for my screw ups and show up for the times when I'm called in or called out. And I don't have that fear of getting canceled. What it is for me is, because you brought that up earlier,
Yeah.
canceled is being given a timeout. That's how because I have been canceled. Uh, When, no, I won't go into that. We don't have time for it, but I have been. So I got to have a timeout, think about what I did. How did I say it? Why did I say it? Could I do it differently? Or is it about how it landed with somebody that maybe
Yeah.
I don't have control over, but it's a learning time. So I've got a timeout. Okay, great. I get to learn from that too.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Just thank you. I think this is a good place to wrap up because I think we can keep talking. So I'm going to bring it in and say thank you. This is a really great convo. So much in here around this topic that I believe people care about and want to do something about. And there's so much in there that prevents from further stepping out of the self and into community with people. To me, that was like a really big theme. It's knowing self to then be in community with people, and in community with people and relationship with people is where you really learn how to do these things that we're talking about. And it's different from person to person and group to group and day to day, meeting to meeting. So if we learn how to navigate people and relationships and all these spaces, it really changes things. That to me is like the biggest takeaway in all of it. So thank you so much for sharing your personal wisdom, your experiences, and your modeling. I absolutely love it. So thank you for being here. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn. Yeah. I pulled back from public life a few years back because that was, yeah, being a trans and intersex person, I was targeted with a lot of unwanted attention. I'll put it that way. I'm not easy to connect with. You will be transparent about that, but I have a YouTube channel. I don't turn comments on. I don't use it a lot. There is stuff that I've shared there from times when I taught classes and things like that. But LinkedIn, you can communicate with me on LinkedIn. That's my best suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I'll just double check with you about the link or links
Mhm.
before I put them anywhere so that we'll make sure you're safe and comfortable. And um, we'll just leave it at that. All right, cool. If you would like to get in touch with me, you can visit my website at livingunapologetically.com. On there, you have all of my social media handles. You can email us. There's freebies. Take a look at our guided meditations. I'm super excited about those. There's tip sheets and other things available for you. You will also have access to buy my book, Bias Conscious Leadership, a framework for leading with action and accountability. I didn't say this, so I really want to drive this point home, which is please share this conversation with people on your network. Like, subscribe, comment, and I think that's it. I hope to hear from you soon. And until next time, bye.